Sergeant Daniel Reeves moved through the chaos with deliberate caution, rifle at the ready, boots crunching over debris. His HUD lit up in soft pulses, scanning for any sign of life. The battle had ended hours ago, but the war was far from over. And here, behind enemy lines, anyone left breathing was either a survivor or bait. The mission had been doomed from the start. Intelligence had been wrong, fatally wrong. The Coalition strike force, made up of human, Xanthari, and Varic troops, had been promised an easy sweep and clear operation against a small enemy outpost. Instead, they'd walk straight into a kill zone, surrounded by artillery and swarms of automated drones. Most of the force had been annihilated in the first 20 minutes. The rest had scattered, retreating into the dense forests to regroup. Command had given one order over and over on the comms: get out. Now, leave the dead and wounded. Reeves hated those words. He'd heard them before. They never sat right. He was about to turn back toward the evac route when his visor picked up a faint biosign reading. Weak, fading, but still there. The coordinates were only 40 meters away, near a crumpled section of ridge. He advanced slowly, keeping low, scanning for traps. As the smoke parted, the outline of a figure emerged. At first, Reeves thought it was a body already gone cold, but then it moved. It was a Xanthari warrior. Reeves recognized him from earlier briefings. Lieutenant Koresh, one of their coalition's elite frontline fighters. The alien had been a towering, commanding presence on the battlefield with heavy chitin plating. Across his upper body and 4 powerful legs built for speed and power. Now he lay sprawled in the dirt, his lower half twisted at a wrong, sickening angle. The armor plates on his abdomen and spine were cracked, blackened by plasma burns. Koresh's mandibles twitched as he saw Reeves approach. His voice, normally a deep commanding rumble, came out as a hoarse rasp. Human, leave me. My legs are gone. I cannot fight. Reeves crouched beside him, eyes scanning the wounds. He'd seen enough battlefield injuries to know what he was looking at, a severed spinal column. Koresh was paralyzed from the midsection down. The burns were deep, the bleeding internal. Without immediate medical intervention, he wouldn't survive for long. Reeves opened a comm channel. Command, I've got a live Xanthari, critical condition, needs immediate evac. Static crackled for a moment before a cold voice replied. Negative, Sergeant. Priority evac is human personnel only. Xanthari Command has ordered their wounded to be abandoned. Repeat, abandon. Reeves felt his jaw tighten. Say again? You heard me, Sergeant. That's an order. The line went dead. He looked back at Koresh. The alien warrior's compound eyes stared up at the gray sky, his mandibles still, as though he had expected this. Reeves realized he probably had. Koresh knew his people's command structure, knew how pragmatic and merciless they could be in war. But something about it burned in Reeves' chest. Abandoning a man, no, a soldier, because it was inconvenient? That wasn't how you treated someone who'd stood beside you in a firefight. Reeves powered down his comm and slung his rifle over his shoulder. Guess it's just you and me then. Koresh turned his gaze toward him, confusion flickering in his expression. Why? You owe me nothing. Reeves gave him a grim half-smile. You're still breathing. That's enough for me. Before Koresh could protest, Reeves crouched and slipped his arms under the alien's torso. The weight was staggering. Koresh's armored plating and sheer mass made him feel like hauling a small tank. But Reeves locked his muscles, gritted his teeth, and heaved out with his Xanthari slung over his shoulders in a fireman's carry. Every step sent a fresh wave of strain up his legs and back. The alien's breathing was shallow against his neck. Somewhere in the distance, Reeves heard the faint whine of enemy patrol engines moving through the valley. He adjusted Koresh's weight, set his eyes on the direction of the evac zone 5 kilometers away, and started walking. The forest swallowed them in shadows and smoke. Reeves moved quickly but deliberately, each step calculated to avoid snapping twigs or crunching through loose rock. The weight of Koresh across his shoulders was a constant, bone-deep reminder of the choice he'd made. His back ached, his legs burned, and sweat trickled down his spine under the armored plating of his suit. Every so often, Koresh stirred, not in strength, but in discomfort, and Reeves could hear the faint rattle in the alien's breathing. The paralysis had robbed Koresh of mobility, but it hadn't dulled his awareness. "You should not do this," Koresh rasped, his voice weak but steady. "They will kill you for helping me. You defy your own orders." "They can try," Reeves replied without slowing down. It wasn't bravado, not exactly. It was the quiet, stubborn certainty of a man who had already decided the risk was worth it. In his mind, the decision had been made the moment command told him to leave Koresh behind. The forest was still for now, but the silence was deceptive. Somewhere in the distance, the whine of repulsor engines cut briefly through the air before fading. Enemy scouts. Their search patterns were tight. If they were this far out already, it meant the sweep would close around him soon. Reeves followed the path of least exposure, skirting along gullies and weaving between clusters of thick alien ferns that rose taller than his head. The plant's broad, jagged leaves dripped condensation onto his armor, masking his heat signature from thermal scans. Still, every movement carried the tension of being a heartbeat away from discovery. "Humans," Koresh said after a while, his voice slurred by pain. "I was told, selfish. You fight only for your own kind." Reeves smirked faintly, though Koresh couldn't see it. "Guess you met the wrong ones." The Zenthuri warrior was silent for a long moment after that. Reeves wondered if he'd passed out again, but then Koresh's mandibles twitched faintly. A small gesture, almost a smile. They pressed on until the forest dipped into a narrow ravine. A shallow stream trickled along the bottom, its water tinted a faint metallic green from the minerals in the alien soil. Reeves waded in, boots sinking slightly in the mud, and let the sound of running water mask his movements. It was here, Gin. The quiet of the ravine that Koresh's breathing changed, faster, shallower. "You're crashing," Reeves muttered. He carefully shifted Koresh's weight, freeing a hand to dig through his belt pouches until he found a compact injector. He thumbed the dial and pressed it against the alien's side. Koresh hissed at the sting of the needle, but within seconds his eyes regained some focus. "What was that? Med-stim? Won't fix the paralysis, but it'll keep your vitals from flatlining." "Bought us maybe an hour." Koresh stared at him. "Why risk your life for me?" Reeves didn't answer right away. Instead, he scanned the lip of the ravine, checking for movement. Only when he was satisfied they were alone did he speak. "Long time ago," he said quietly, "I got hit bad. Couldn't move. Everyone thought I was done for. One guy, just one, came back for me. Carried me all the way out. He didn't have to, but he did. I swore if I ever got the chance, I'd do the same." Before Koresh could respond, movement flickered above them. 3 shapes appeared at the top of the ravine, sleek, insectoid forms in matte black armor. Enemy scouts. Their segmented helmets scanned the gully, lenses glowing faintly as they swept for heat signatures. Reeves froze, pressing his body against the ravine wall, holding Koresh close to keep the alien's bulk out of sight. The scouts paused, antenna-like sensors twitching as if sniffing the air, then began to move along the ridgeline. Reeves waited until their footfalls faded into the distance before exhaling. That was too close. He adjusted Koresh's position and started moving again, faster this time. They were burning daylight, and the evac zone was still over 4 kilometers away. Every minute brought more risk and more pressure on his already battered body. The forest thinned sooner than Reeves would have liked, and with it, his cover. The dense tangle of alien vegetation gave way to scattered trees clinging to rocky ground, the canopy breaking apart to let in shafts of pale sunlight. Beyond this sparse belt lay the cracked plains, flat, exposed terrain with nowhere to hide. Koresh stirred faintly on his back. "Too open," the Xanthari rasped. "They will see us." Reeves didn't need the warning. His eyes were already scanning the horizon for movement, every muscle tense. The enemy had been too quiet for too long. They reached a shallow ridge overlooking the plains. Reeves crouched low, easing Koresh's weight so he could peek over the edge. That's when the sound hit him, the high-pitched whine of repulsor engines, getting louder by the second. A shadow swept across the ground. Reeves looked up. A gunship. Its black hull gleamed under the alien sun, rotors spinning at its flanks, the undercarriage bristling with plasma cannons. Worse, its side hatches were open, and inside he saw the glint of armored infantry preparing to deploy. "Hold on," he muttered. Koresh's mandibles twitched in confusion. "What?" Reeves bolted from the ridge, sprinting for the far side of the plains. The gunship banked sharply, adjusting course to pursue. A burst of plasma fire scorched the ground a meter behind him, spraying molten dirt against his armor. He didn't slow. More fire rained down, sizzling past his legs, striking the earth with a hiss that filled the air with acrid steam. Every impact reminded him that one lucky shot would end both of them instantly. Halfway across the open stretch, enemy scouts appeared over the ridge behind them. 3 insectoid soldiers, rifles already raised. Down. Reeves dropped too. One knee, swinging his rifle up. The first burst tore through the nearest scout's chest, sending him sprawling. The second tried to flank, darting sideways in a blur of movement. Reeves tracked him and fired, cutting him down mid-stride. Third managed to return fire, a searing plasma bolt clipping Reeves' shoulder plate. His armor screamed warnings in his HUD, heat alarms flaring red, but he ignored them and took the last scout with a clean headshot. No time to breathe. The gunship was looping back. Reeves shoved himself to his feet and ran. His boots pounded against the cracked ground, Koresh's weight forcing every step into a brutal test of endurance. His lungs burned, his heartbeat roared in his ears. The terrain rose again ahead. Another ridge, smaller than the last, but enough to break line of sight if he could reach it before the gunship's next pass. The gunship opened fire again. Blast struck just to his right, flinging shards of superheated rock against his leg armor. He stumbled but kept moving. They hit the ridge just as another plasma burst scorched the ground where they'd been. Reeves dove behind the slope, Koresh hitting the dirt with him. The gunship roared past overhead, overshooting. His cum crackled. Suddenly, "Reeves, where the hell are you?" "Evac's on the ground. We're leaving in 3 minutes." Reeves keyed the mic. "Not without him." There was a pause. "You're insane." "Maybe. Just keep that ramp down." He cut the channel and checked Koresh. The alien's breathing was ragged, but his eyes were sharp. "We keep moving." Koresh's mandibles clicked. "They will not stop. They'll have to catch us first." Reeves hefted the Xanthari back onto his shoulders and began the climb to the top of the ridge. The evac point was just beyond, close enough that he could almost hear the faint hum of its engines over the pounding of his own blood. But so were the enemy troops. From the north, a squad of infantry crested the plains. From the south, the gunship angled in for another attack. The ridge offered a thin line of cover, not enough to make Reeves feel safe, but enough to buy seconds. Seconds were life right now. He eased Koresh down onto the dirt, setting him against the slope. The Xanthari's compound eyes locked onto him. "You can't fight them all." "Watch me," Reeves said flatly. Below, The enemy squad advanced in a steady, unhurried line. Black insectoid armor glinted under the pale sun, weapons raised, formation tight. These weren't the twitchy scouts from earlier. These were trained shock troopers, methodical and heavily armed. The gunship angled overhead, slowing its approach, ready to drop fire the moment it had a clear shot. Reeves checked his rifle's power cell, nearly depleted. He popped it out, slammed in his last full charge, and let out a breath. The first plasma bolts hissed past his head, melting grooves into the rock. Reeves leaned out just enough to fire. The recoil thudded into his shoulder as he dropped the lead trooper, then the second. The rest didn't falter. The ridge shook under another blast from the gunship's cannons. Rock fragments showered down around them. Koresh gritted his mandibles, frustration written in every twitch of his facial. Plates. If I could stand. You'd be right there with me, Reeves finished, sliding back into cover. He didn't say what he was really thinking, and maybe we'd both already be dead. The enemy pushed closer, their weapons spitting green plasma in relentless arcs. Reeves rose, fired in controlled bursts, dropped back down. His movements were pure instinct, honed over years of training. Pop up, shoot, move, repeat. The heat from the rifle's barrel scorched through his gloves. Then came the hiss of something heavier. Mortar. The shell landed 20 meters away, the blast wave slamming into the ridge. Reeves' ears rang. His HUD flickered with static. They were tightening the noose. He tapped his comm. Avac, how far out? We're holding at the LZ, but we've got hostiles closing. You've got maybe 90 seconds before we lift. 90 seconds. Against a squad and a gunship. Reeves risked another look over the ridge. The infantry were almost at the base now, spreading out to flank. Above them, the gunship descended lower, its side gunners bracing to unload. Reeves knew he had one shot to break their momentum. He grabbed the EMAP. Grenade from his belt, his last one, thumbed the activation stud and hurled it straight at the gunship. The blast detonated midair with a crackling sphere of blue energy. The gunship's lights flickered, engines sputtered, and for 5 precious seconds, its cannons went dead. That was the opening he needed. Reeves vaulted over the ridge and charged. Down the slope, rifle blazing. The sudden aggression threw the infantry off balance. He dropped 2 before they recovered and opened fire on him. Plasma bolts streaked past. One clipped his thigh armor. Another burned a groove across his left shoulder. Pain flared, hot and sharp, but he didn't stop. By the time he reached the base of the ridge, he'd forced the squad to scatter for cover. It wasn't a win, but it was enough to make them hesitate. He turned and scrambled back up to Koresh, breathing hard. We're moving, now. The gunship systems were rebooting. The infantry were regrouping. They'd be surrounded in seconds. Reeves hoisted Koresh onto his shoulders again, the alien's armor plates digging into his collarbone. Every muscle screamed in protest, but he forced his legs to move. They crested the ridge, and there it was. The evac ship had hovered just beyond the planes, ramp lowered, engines roaring. A human pilot stood at the top of the ramp, waving frantically. Go! Koresh urged, though his voice was weak. Reeves ran. The world narrowed to the sound of his own breath, the thunder of his boots on cracked ground, and the staccato scream of weapons fire behind him. The gunship came back online, its cannons lighting up the dirt around them. Each blast sent molten shards into his armor, burning through. The outer plates, 30 meters, 20. A plasma bolt grazed his side, the heat searing through fabric and skin. He stumbled, almost went down, but Koresh's clawed hand gripped his shoulder. Don't stop. The alien growled. 10 meters. The pilot leaned out, covering them with bursts of suppressive fire. Enemy infantry fell, buying them the last few seconds they needed. Reeves charged up the ramp, collapsing to his knees as the ship lifted off. The hatch sealed behind them, cutting off the roar of battle. They'd made it. The sun of Kareth IV was a molten disk sinking into the horizon as Garrick finally stumbled into the forward medical camp. His entire body felt like it was made of lead. His back screamed with every movement, his shoulders were raw from the straps of the makeshift harness, and his knees buckled with every step. Yet, he didn't stop until both of them crossed the threshold of the triage perimeter. The moment they stepped in, a chorus of gasps rose from the medics. Not because a human soldier had arrived, they'd seen plenty of battered humans before, but because of the limp figure strapped to his back. General Kor, the great warrior of the Zarkai. The alien scales were dull now, his armor dented and streaked with dried blood, his limbs still useless from the neural strike that had paralyzed him. His eyes fluttered open, and he took in the sight of the camp. He breathed a ragged sigh, the first true relief since that cursed battlefield. Get him into an isolation pod now. One of the alien medics barked, rushing forward with equipment, but Garrick didn't immediately let go. He crouched slowly, easing Kor from his shoulders with a care more suited to placing a newborn than an armored warlord. Their eyes met human, brown to alien gold. "You're safe now," Garrick said simply. Kor blinked at him, struggling for words. "You carried me?" His voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silence that had fallen over the medics, every ear caught it. Seemed like the right thing to do. Garrick answered. The alien's gaze flicked to the gathered crowd, many of whom had been the ones to turn away on the battlefield. Shame burned on their faces. Not one of them could meet his eyes. They had all thought the same thing, that a paralyzed soldier, even a famous one, was a lost cause. His survival odds had been close to zero. They had chosen practicality over loyalty. Garrick, apparently, had chosen differently. As the medics carried Kor into surgery, the Zarkai commander in charge of the forward base approached Garrick. "Human, you've done something no one here would have dared." Garrick, still catching his breath, gave a tired grin. "Yeah, well, no one told me he was impossible to save." The commander studied him for a long moment before speaking. Again, "Do you know what carrying another warrior like that means in our culture?" Garrick shook his head. Didn't really think about culture. Just thought about getting him home. "It means," the commander said slowly, "you take responsibility for their life. And in turn, their life belongs to you until they repay the debt." That revelation hit Garrick harder than the physical exhaustion. He'd just made the most feared alien general in the sector indebted to him. Not in a ceremonial way, but in a deep binding oath of honor. 3 weeks later, when Kor emerged from recovery walking again, his armor polished, his colors restored, the camp held a formal ceremony. The alien warriors stood before the assembled, soldiers human and alien alike, and declared in a booming voice, "This human, Garrick Holt, did not see an enemy, a liability, or a doomed man. He saw a comrade. I owe him my life, and until that debt is repaid, no force in this galaxy will harm him without facing me first." From that day forward, Garrick's name spread across the front lines, not because of his kills or his tactical genius, but because he'd carried a legend on his back through hell. Soldiers whispered about him in the trenches. Alien warriors gave him the traditional Zarkai salute, fist over heart, whenever they passed. And on the rare nights when Garrick and Kor shared a drink, the alien would sometimes glance over with that same look of disbelief he'd had in the med bay. "You should have left me there." Kor would say, "Yeah." Garrick would reply with a grin, "But then who would I drink with?" The war continued, but in the minds of those who heard the story, one truth remained unshakable. When everyone else turned away, one human had carried a paralyzed alien home, not for glory, not for reward, but simply because it was the right thing to do.